Why don't we get started? Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Deborah Block. I'm the producing artistic director of Theatre Exile. I am so happy you're joining us here for Exiled with Exile and Conversations in Exile. We started this when the world started to turn upside down, and at Theatre Exile, what we like to do more than anything else is connect with people and share and communicate. And we realized we were not going to let a global pandemic get in the way of that. So we started these conversations because what I found about the Theatre Exile audience is what I love so much about them is that they just like to look behind the curtain, ask questions, and get engaged. And it's really what I love so much about being here. Today, we have a very, very special guest. Ray Didinger is here to join us. He's an award-winning columnist, author, radio, TV broadcaster, NFL film producer, filmmaker, and of course, playwright. I could go on and on with his bio, but we're only going to be here for about 40 minutes or so. And so before I really start talking to Ray, I wanted to let you know that we're going to be talking about Tommy and me. We're going to be talking about his latest book. We're going to be talking about the state of the sports in the world and how it's affecting us Philadelphians and fans. And you guys are going to get a chance to ask questions as well. We have a chat feature in Zoom, which I will be looking at. If anyone has questions along the way, just feel free to type it in and I will do my best to direct those questions over to Ray. As I said, this will last these run about 30 to 45 minutes. And what we like to do at the end is also open up so that everyone can see each other. It's like being in the lobby after the show, just to be able to talk to each other and see each other and not in this sort of formal webinar setting that we're doing right now. So thank you again for joining us. And Ray Didinger, thank you so much for being here. So happy you've joined us.
That's my pleasure. Looking forward to this.
And as we were talking before, there's so many things that we want to talk about and so many questions that I have for you. But the first thing I want to bring up is Tommy and me. It is what brought us all together. It's what brought Ray Didinger to be part of the Theatre Exile family, although you had participated with us before back in the Philly fan days.
Yes.
Correct? But you had this story brewing in you, and I'd love for you to tell everyone a little bit about the genesis of the story and how it made its way to the theater as opposed to any other medium. You work in so many different medium, and how you ended up choosing theater.
The story of Tommy and me is really the story of me and Tommy McDonald. Some of the older people in the audience, the older fans, know very well who he is. He was a great football player for the Eagles in the late 50s into the early 60s. Was a big contributor on the 1960 World Championship team. And his arrival in Philadelphia in 1957 sort of coincided with, a little 10-year-old boy's love of football, that boy being me. And Tommy immediately became my favorite player. And my family, my mother and father, were such big Eagles fans that we used to go to the Eagles training camp, which was then in Hershey, Pennsylvania, every summer for 2 weeks. And we would go up there and we would watch the Eagles practice every day. And NFL training camps back in those days were nothing like today. There was no security, there were no fences, there was nobody saying you can't walk here. There was a field, there were the players, and there was you. So you could walk right up to these guys, talk to them, get an autograph. Or in the case of Tommy McDonald, when I met him the first time, he handed me his helmet and said, "Here, you want to carry this while I walk to the field?" And that became kind of a thing that for every day in those 2 weeks, he would meet me outside the locker room and hand me his helmet, and we would take that walk from the locker room to the field, which was about 3 blocks. It was not a short walk. And we would talk and we would chat, and he started calling me little brother. And we just became friends. And that went his entire time in Philadelphia. Every summer we got to spend that time up there. And it really did feel like, I really did feel like his little brother. I mean, he made me feel like I was part of his family. He was so open and so warm and so great to me. Well, then later on, I become a sports writer and get into the business, and had the opportunity to interview him when he was retired. Never told him who I was. I never wanted to sort of evoke those kinds of memories. But I knew the one thing that Tommy felt, he had a great career, great career. But the one sort of void in it was he had not been voted into the Hall of Fame, which he should have been long ago. And that was the one kind of regret that, yeah, I got my championship ring. I played 12 seasons, All-American in college, but, I would have really liked to have gotten in the Hall of Fame with the big guys. And so I took that opportunity to, now that I was a sports writer, I could actually kind of begin campaigning for that. So it was a nice story of him giving to me when I was a little boy, and then me later on, years later, being in a position where I could give something back to him, where I could help him realize the one thing that he really wanted most, which was his bust in Canton, Ohio. And so in 1998, it happened, and he asked me to be his presenter, and we wind up sharing that moment together. And it just struck me as this is a very unique and special story. And I said, I want to share this with people. I want to tell this story. Then the only question was how to tell it. And thought about a book, but it didn't quite seem like a book, but it certainly felt like more than a newspaper article. And then I just got this idea that, partly inspired by Philly Fan, because I had seen Philly Fan and I saw sports on the stage. I thought, maybe this might work as a play. So I sat down, never written a play before, but I sat down and wrote one and brought it to you guys, brought it to Joe Canuso and you. And you got me together with Bruce Graham to help polish it up a little bit, and got it on the stage in 2016. And it's been a wonderful experience. We've had 4 summer runs with it, and actually it's a little sad right now because we should be in the middle of run number 5, because right now we should be putting Tommy and me on the stage out at the Performing Arts Center in Westchester. They wanted to bring it there, but obviously, situation being what it is, we can't. But that's how Tommy and me kind of started up in Hershey in 1957, and brings us full circle to today.
There's so many different art forms that can tell a story, but I'm thrilled that you brought it to the theater. I mean, certainly to us, but to the theater, because at least why I'm attracted to this play is just the heart. It's the human journey. That's what theater does so well. And for any of you who've seen Tommy and me, it just sits in your heart. I mean, I don't care if you're a sap or stone cold person, it hits you there. And the thing that I love about it, and especially today, today's day and age, is that there's this sense of reciprocity, and if you do good in the world, good will come back.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
We need that message, and at Theatre Exile, we were talking, like, a lot of the messages we try to uncover the hard part of the human journey. And this is part of the human journey that I want to always happen. I want this to be the world that we always live in, where good begets good.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that, Deb. The one thing that I found most gratifying about the whole experience was every night after we do the performance, we do a talk back. That's been part of it from the beginning, is that there's that audience Q&A at the end of the night. And invariably, every single time we do it, there's somebody in the audience who says, hey, I'm not a football fan, and I never heard of this Tommy McDonald guy. I knew nothing about this when I walked in here, but the story touched my heart, and that to me was the most gratifying part, because you and I and Joe, we all kind of stood by the door when it opened, and we watched the people file into the theater, and it seemed like a lot of them wore Eagles jersey, they wore Eagles hats, and so you had those people. You didn't have to worry about them. They were already invested in the story. But it was those other people that just kind of came along, didn't know anything, but just got immersed in this story about this little boy and his hero. And at the end of the night, we're every bit as moved as the fans, as the football fans. So to see that night after night after night, people coming into the theater and walking out feeling really good and uplifted by this story it was tremendously gratifying. I still look back on it. I've saved a bunch of the programs, and I still look back on them and just sort of scratch my head and just marvel at the fact that we've come this far.
Well, I think the story really compels that. But one of the things that's really fun, I mean, if you, we now this talkback is after every show. I mean, we just do this talkback because people want to tell stories. But also one of the things that's fun for me is Joe Canuso is there, the director and Theatre Exile's founder, every night. And our cast, Tom Teddy and Matt Pfeiffer and Frank Nardi Jr. and Simon Kiley, and they are all just giddy themselves. They haven't grown old of this. This is not, there's no jadedness. There's just a love of the sports, a love of this story, and just a love of this theatrical experience. And you can see it every night in them. That's true blue every night, and it's really lovely to watch.
Yeah, and we've been very fortunate because a lot of people from the football community have come out and supported the play. We try every night to have sort of a celebrity host for the Q&A. So over time, we've had Dick Vermeil, and we've had Ron Jaworski, and last year we had Harold Carmichael, who now is in the Hall of Fame himself. He came and did it, and that Seth Joyner has done it a couple of times. Vi Sekahama has done it a couple of times. A lot of my friends from radio, Glenn Macnow, Angelo Cataldi, they have come and hosted it. So, I mean, everybody has really kind of gotten behind the story. And it's an easy story to get behind because it's just, it's real, it's true. And you said it comes from the heart. I mean, that was when Jeff Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, came last year with his wife and another couple. I mean, he was at the curtain, he was the first one that jumped up for the standing ovation. I was watching, and and when he came out and he did the talk back at the end, the first thing he said is, this story represents football in Philadelphia because it starts with the heart. And that sort of speaks to the fans' love of this team and the way they support this team through good seasons and bad. But it also, to this particular story, because it's just so relatable. I mean, we all have childhood heroes, be they football players, writers, musicians, or what. And it's so rare that the little kid actually gets to meet his hero at some point in his life, much less that you forge a lifelong relationship with him. But that's the uniqueness of the story. And I think people, whether you're a football fan or not, you can really relate to that.
It's true. It's true. And I really do feel like it brings out the best of the fans, at the play. Ryan Shute actually wanted to know if you have any other plays in the works.
Oh, no, not at the moment. I actually thought I had a little time on my hands, as all of us have had over these last few months, and I actually thought about doing another play, and it'll be a football play, and I actually kind of began doing the research, and just as I sat down to start writing, I thought, I really ought to do some research and see if this play has been done before. So I did, and it turns out that it has been done before. So I just kind of said, oh, okay, all right, that's fine. I'm not going to try and copy somebody else's work. So right now, no plans for any other plays.
Well, you have years of experience behind you, both since you were a kid, just the love of the sports and your beautiful career. I'm sure if you'll look behind the curtain and a story will evoke and jump out, and we'd all love to hear it. And that'll be for sure. Speaking of your years of experience, you're actually just completed, I believe, your 12th book. Is that correct?
Yep, 12th book.
It has a wonderful title. Do you want to tell everyone the title of this book that's coming out in the spring?
Oh, here we go. It's Finished Business. That's going to be the cover of the book. The title is Finished Business, My 50 Years of Headlines, Heroes, and Heartaches. And it's basically the story. It's basically my memoir of what really is now, as of this year, 50 years of doing this. So that's a long time. A lot of experiences, a lot of excitement, a lot of disappointments. But 50 years seems like a good spot in your life to kind of just like look back and reflect. And that's kind of what this book is. It's just a 50-year reflection of my life covering sports in the Philadelphia market.
It's there are a lot of ups and downs, and I think our audiences, our fans, are unique in Philadelphia. You've been here your whole life, but you've traveled as well. I mean, how would you classify the Philly fan?
Oh, I think they're the best fans in America, and I think this is the best sports town in America. I truly believe that. I'm not patronizing anyone. I'm not trying to do a company line here. I mean, I really believe that, and I've had that argument hundreds of times over with other sports writers in other cities who argue the opposite. I mean, they think Philadelphia is the worst, have the worst fans and the toughest fans, and you know the identity of the town is the Boo Birds, and you know that, oh, you're so mean to your players and you drive the great players out of town and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that it's a canard. I don't think it's true at all. I think that the fans here have been through some really rough times. They've supported their teams even whether they win or lose, and they're tough. If a team underperforms, if a team underachieves, if they see a player loafing, if they see a coach do something that's flat out stupid, they're going to let them hear about it. And well, that doesn't make them bad fans. It makes them smart fans. And they set the bar high here. And the fact of the matter is, if you come in and you do the right things, if you're a good coach, if you're a player who plays hard, if you're a team that goes out and wins, these people will embrace you, and not just embrace you for that year, but embrace you forever. I mean, Dick Vermeil, you know, when the Eagles hired Dick Vermeil, he was a Californian by birth. He had worked his whole life, lived his whole life in California. He was coaching at UCLA. It was the job he always wanted. And the Eagles owner, Leonard Toews, saw him win the Rose Bowl in 1976 and said, I want to hire that guy. So he flew out to California and met with Dick Vermeil. And Dick Vermeil said, why would I want to come to Philadelphia? You know, why would I go there? And Jim Murray, the general manager, said, if you come to Philadelphia, you will never leave. I promise you that. And he said, you know, we're so desperate for a winner there. Jimmy's line was, you'll get a standing ovation if you win the coin toss, was what he said. And so Dick, you know, it was one of the great sales jobs in the history of all sports. I mean, Dick said, all right, I'll do it. Packed up his family, moved here, took over the Eagles, took them to a Super Bowl, and what they promised that day has come true. He has never left here. I mean, he went to St. Louis and coached the Rams, won a Super Bowl, went to Kansas City, coached the Chiefs, won a championship there, but always stayed in Philadelphia and has come back to Philadelphia, and now he and Carol live out in Coatesville. And he's been a huge supporter of Tommy and me right from the beginning. Has come to see it twice, hosted the Q&As. And here's a guy who said, I'm never coming to Philadelphia. And then he came here and he never left. So if this town was as awful to its sports people as everyone claims, something like that would never happen. But he came here, and this is now his home.
It's true. One of the things that I wanted to talk about has to do with that passion of the fans. When you said the toughest fans, I'm like, yeah, what's wrong with that? That's what we are. We're direct. I will say, even as a theater producer, when I have audiences come out, the thing that I love about our Theatre Exile audience is if they like something, they tell me. If they don't like something, they tell me. They use my name. They say, Deborah, this is how I feel. And I love that. And I feel like that's the way we are with the sports as well. And it brings up this very weird phenomena that in the arts community, there's like just as many fans. It's of sports fans than not. And that's not true across the country. A lot of times the arts community is separate. They don't engage in sports. I don't know why that is, but in Philadelphia, I think it's something about our passion. And I'd love to hear about your experience when you came into the arts world and you sort of met that. Was it surprise or?
Yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised. You know, I didn't know really how receptive Theatre Exile would be to a football story. When I brought it to you guys, frankly, it's not something you typically do. But I had seen Philly Fan, and I know it had been successful. And I had met Joe Canuso enough. I went twice, and I met him both times. And I talked to him enough to know that he's a sports fan. I mean, you don't have to talk to Joe very long before you realize he's a big-time sports fan. So I knew at least he was the guy I was bringing the script to. So I knew at least that he had an interest in sports. He knew the Eagles in 1960. He knew Tommy McDonald. So to me, that was, okay, at least this guy will hear me out. But beyond Joe, I mean, I didn't know that there was a whole lot of people in the company that were sports fans. I frankly expected it to be kind of neutral, you know, and that was not the case at all. I mean, once I got involved and began meeting the people and met Matt Pfeiffer and met Tom Teddy and, you know, Ned Price and then, you know, Frank Nardi, all those people that were involved, and then everybody else around it. I mean, Jessica Darling, I mean, everybody, they were real sports fans.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything about the story that I had to spell out for anybody. They got it right away. Would that happen in every other city? Probably not. But I think it speaks to the kind of sports town that Philadelphia is. Sports is just a very pervasive part of the Philadelphia experience. It's to a lot of people in Philadelphia, it's part of their own identity. You know, if you're a Philadelphian, you're an Eagles fan. That's just part of who you are. And I think that cuts across all lines. It cuts across the doctors, the lawyers, and as we've seen now with Tommy and me, certainly the artists.
We do have a question from Brian Buckley, who you had mentioned the Boo Birds and some of the not so shining moments in our history. So he wants to know about the Santa Claus snowball fight, and he wants to know about that. Hear the real story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I know Buck. I think he's the former CB West football captain, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, people talk about the snowballs of Santa Claus. And in fact, when I first met Jeff Lurie, when he bought the Eagles, they set up a thing where he and I went to lunch together because, you know, Jeffrey is not from here. Jeffrey's the first guy to own the Eagles, but not be from Philadelphia. He's a New Englander. He actually wanted to buy the Patriots, lost out on that. But he wanted to buy a team. The Eagles became available. He bought the Eagles, but unlike the Eagles, all the way back to Bert Bell, when they were founded in 1933, they had always been owned by somebody from Philly. Jeff was the first guy from outside. So they set up a lunch where I was going to go to lunch with Jeff. We were going to meet, and I was the guy who was going to teach him the history of football in Philadelphia. And his first question to me, while we were still pondering the menu, was, did they really throw snowballs at Santa Claus? And I said, yeah, they did. I can vouch for that because I was there. December 1968 at Franklin Field, I was there when the snowballs flew. Because I think Jeff, like a lot of people who weren't here, had thought that was like some sort of a joke that started years ago. And, those fans are so mean, they threw snowballs at Santa Claus. It was a joke, and it was repeated so often that it kind of took on a life of its own. But it didn't really happen. And I was the one that had to break the news to Jeff that, oh, no, it happened, and I was there that day. But I went on to explain that you got to understand the circumstances. The Eagles were a terrible team in 1968. You know, they only won 2 games, but in winning 2 games, they blew the first pick in the draft, who could have been O.J. Simpson. I mean, it was one of those years that everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. The owner was going bankrupt. The coach was going to get fired. The fans were in revolt. The team was the worst in the league. They blew the first-round draft choice. And besides all that, it was really, when you get right down to it, a really ratty-looking Santa Claus. So you factor all of that in, plus a big snowfall the previous day that was all in the stadium, you're going to get snowballs. And so it really did happen. Buck, I can tell you honestly, it did happen. I didn't throw a snowball. I did not throw one. My mother wouldn't let me. Not that I didn't think about it, but yes, it really did happen. But unfortunately, that's the narrative now that has followed Philadelphia fans ever since is, they're the meanest fans. They threw snowballs at Santa Claus. Yes, we did, but we had our reasons.
Well, it goes back to you saying we're tough fans, right?
Yes.
We're tough fans. That's Bruce Graham talked about that in Philly fan as well at that moment. He said, but you know, the Santa wasn't up to snuff. You know, we expect good things from our Santa too, like our teams and our Santas.
Yep.
Um, so we know the uncertainty of the world right now, and we know the world of theater is trying to navigate, and we know the world of sports is trying to figure out how to move forward and how to have games, and what does it mean to have games without fans in the stands in the fields, and how do you think we're doing? What do you see? You have, yeah, what do you see, Ray? Tell us.
Um, it's to me on its face, it seems like an impossible. It seems like almost impossible that you could have a professional sports season with all the teams and all the players and all the moving parts continue to function in a global pandemic. Um, I mean, if somebody had tried to write a script about this, I would have said that's way too far-fetched. But that's where we find ourselves. And I applaud the NBA and the NHL for making it work as well as they have made it work to this point. I mean, the NBA they're doing everything in that bubble down in Orlando. The players are all sort of living in this bubble world. The coaches, there are no fans in the stands, which is really weird. But to this point, I mean, of all those players down there, nobody's tested positive for COVID, which is pretty amazing. So they've been able to seal it up and play pretty good basketball. Not the Sixers, but the rest of the guys are playing pretty good basketball, and they're pulling it off. Same thing in hockey. I mean, the hockey is now split between both Edmonton and Toronto. They've really well organized it, and they're making it work. And best news for Philadelphia fans is the Flyers are playing lights out. The Flyers are playing really well. In fact, it's not at all a stretch to say that they could win the Stanley Cup. They really could. They're that good. They're young. They're hungry, and they're just getting more confident with each game. So they have a real chance to win the whole thing, which would be, how great would that be for the city? I don't know that we'd be able to have a parade. I guess we probably wouldn't be allowed to have a parade, but everybody would be able to celebrate something. And believe me, it's not impossible. Baseball has been very up and down. And football is going to really be hard. I mean, that's the question people ask me all the time. Are we going to have a football season? Well, you've already seen in college football, several of the big conferences have just said no. You know, the Big Ten, no. The people in Penn State, I mean, I can't imagine an autumn without football. And the economy up there is going to take a big hit when they don't have Penn State football. I mean, those 6 or 7 football weekends up at State College, that's the engine that drives the state college economy for a whole year. Is they live a whole year on those 6 or 7 Saturdays. But that's not going to be there now. And that's going to be all across Michigan, Ohio State, big schools, Wisconsin, schools with real history and tradition. They've just said, no, we're not doing it. Now, other colleges are going to go ahead with it. We've seen that. The Big 12 said they're going to play. I think the SEC is going to play. The ACC says they're going to play. So you got some big conferences shutting down. You got other big conferences are going to try and play through it. I just don't know that with the contagion of this disease and being what it is, I just don't know how you're going to play a sport like football and not put people at risk. The NFL, I know the TV networks are putting enormous pressure on the league and the teams to play. If you lose an NFL season, the economic impact across all the TV networks, NBC, ESPN, CBS, all of them, we're not talking millions, we're talking billions of dollars. So the TV networks want those games. They want product at 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, so they can sell the advertising and they can keep the networks afloat. So they're putting tremendous pressure on the leagues to play. Are you going to be able to pull it off? Look, I think it's going to start on time. I mean, the NFL has run right on schedule up till now. Teams are in training camp now. They're going to put pads on this week and start a little bit of limited practice. September the 10th is supposed to be the first game. The Eagles are supposed to start September 13th. I think that will happen. I think they're going to get to the starting line, and I think they're going to start. But can they carry it through to a Super Bowl in February? I don't know. I mean, we hear the doctors are all talking and the medical science are all talking about how this disease is actually going to ramp up when the cold weather comes. Can they get through a football season and play a contact sport? Which, I mean, if there's one sport that has no approximation of social distancing. It's football. I mean, you huddle after every play, for heaven's sakes. So it is the anti-social distancing sport. And can you get a team of 53 players and coaches and trainers and equipment managers, fly them around the country, play games, and still keep those guys safe? That's going to be very hard to do. There's already been 66 NFL players have opted out. Have said, look, I'm not playing. You know, they have some of them have prior health conditions that would put them at risk. The other guys are just afraid for their families, their wives and children. They don't want to bring anything home to them. Some people have criticized them. I never would. I mean, it's a totally personal decision. And if some guy doesn't want to take that chance or put his family at risk, I have no problem with that. That's his choice. I respect that. And people will say, well, 66 players in the whole league, that's not a big deal. Yeah, it is. I mean, 66 players represents one whole team. I mean, you're basically taking the equivalent of one whole team out of the league this year. So that's the challenge they're going to have to face. And the challenge is only going to get greater once the season starts. But I do believe it'll start. I just think the finishing is going to be the harder part.
Yeah, I can't imagine these people who've worked so hard their whole lives to get to the NFL. Everything about them was focused towards the NFL, and they arrive. And for them to make a decision like that, it had to be an incredibly difficult decision, because it means everything they've worked towards. And
Yep.
and so I hope the league is kind to them. I hope their fans are kind to them. And I hope we make it through and know that everyone wants this to be. We can't have normal. We can't have what it was before. It just can't be.
No.
And we all wanted and needed so much. It's part of our lives. It's part of the passion. It's part of the joy of our lives. But what we always want to remember is we want to get to that place where we can experience joy. And so we want everyone to get through this in a healthy way if possible.
Sure. It's, if it really happens and they play the season and the games are played and we have the Eagles play their 8 games at the Link, I mean, you'll be able to watch it on TV. People get excited. They'll root. But there's going to be no substitute for that feeling that you get in Lincoln Financial Field, right, those 8 Sundays when the Eagles play a home game. I mean, that excitement, that just makes your heart pound, which it's been doing for me for 50 years now or more. You're not going to have that. I mean, taking the Eagles and having them play the Dallas Cowboys in an empty Lincoln Financial Field is just going to feel so weird. But the league and the commissioner and the coaches and players seem committed to it, and they're going to try and pull it off. But you're right. It's going to be a season unlike no other, but that's the world we're living in right now.
The world we're living in. We have a few questions that I want to see if I can get to as many as possible. There's a whole array of questions. Actually, Michael Demersion asks, what was your jump from behind the keyboard to the front of the camera like? Was it a natural move for you? Because as he said, and it's true, you're awesome on either side. So how was the move to front of camera?
It was different. Michael, I worked with Michael at NFL Films. He was
right.
He was one of the avid editors. One of the guys that actually taught me how to work in avid and edit film. So hi, Mike. Nice to hear from you again.
Mike.
Hope you're doing well. It was tough. I mean, I still don't feel very comfortable on camera. I don't. To me, it's a struggle. I mean, for some people, and I envy those people to whom it comes naturally. I mean, I work with Michael Barkan at NBC Sports Philadelphia, and Michael, it's just so easy for him. You just watch him and he makes it look so effortless. And it's not for me. They kept telling me when I first started doing on camera stuff that you'll get over it. Yeah, you're nervous now, but you'll get over it. Well, I'm still waiting. I mean, I still get really nervous. The idea of doing live television, frankly, I find terrifying. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong. There's so many ways you can mess up and say something, oh my God, and it's gone. It's out there and there's no taking it back. And we're living in a YouTube world where your mistake will then get moved around to other people and it'll just keep running on a constant loop. So it really is a high wire act. that I admire the people that can make it look as easy as they do, and Michael's probably the best at it. But for me, it'll never be a comfortable fit. I enjoy doing it because I enjoy talking football and I enjoy being with Seth and the guys. But I'm squirming the whole time. I just hope that people at home can't see it.
Well, we absolutely can't see that. And the one thing that I'll say from watching you on TV and just watching you with people is you're so thoughtful, Ray. I can't imagine you saying a blunder. You know, we all do. We all say things we don't mean to say. It's all true. But I have seen this with you, even as we're rushing to get you on stage and someone is stopping you and asking you a question. You're so thoughtful in your answers. And I'm sure we all can feel that. So thank you. Just keep doing what you're doing with that, Ray.
I'll try.
Actually, there's a very specific, I love this question. There's a very specific question coming from Ravi Padyar. I hope I pronounced it correctly, about Tommy McDonald. And on the NFL, the DVD about the history of the Eagles, Tommy gets emotional when talking about Norm Van Brocklin.
Yes.
And so what was it about Van Brocklin and the leadership that resonated so much with Tommy?
Well, Van Brocklin was the quarterback of the team that won the championship in 1960. And Tommy, one of the things about Tommy, for as zany a character as he is and as fun-loving and happy-go-lucky as he would appear, Tommy's very emotional. And whenever he talks about people that were important to him in his life, if he talks about his father, he talks about Bud Wilkinson, his coach at Oklahoma, it brings him to tears. He's just one of those kinds of guys. He really is a guy who truly lives his life with his heart on his sleeve. It's one of the things I love about him. Mm-hmm. And Van Brocklin is like that too. Van Brocklin was the quarterback of the team in 1960. Mm-hmm. And Van Brocklin was one of the guys, in Tommy's mind, he really kind of helped make Tommy's career. When Tommy came to Philadelphia from Oklahoma, they couldn't quite find a position for him. They tried him here, they tried him there. And Van Brocklin was one of the people that said, no, he's a receiver. You should make him a receiver. That kid he can go get the ball. And once they put Tommy out there, Van Brocklin Van Brocklin was a great long ball thrower. He was one of the best long ball, deep ball throwers I ever saw. Just accurate, just dropped the ball 50 yards right in your hands. And Tommy was a guy who could get there, and he never dropped anything. So Van Brocklin, who was a really crusty old veteran that had played a long time in Los Angeles, and did not suffer fools gladly. Anyone that played with him will tell you that. He could be very cutting, but if he liked you, he loved you. And he really adopted Tommy early and told Tommy, you're a great player and you're going to have a great career. And I think that gave Tommy the kind of confidence he needed to play, and not just play, but excel in the NFL. And so when Tommy looks back on his career and the success that he had, and every time he looks at that championship ring, he feels like he owes a lot of that to Norm Van Brocklin.
I have a question. Actually, I have a couple questions here that I want to get in. This one's lovely. Ray, if you were a franchise owner and could choose any head coach to run your franchise, is there someone that you would choose right now?
Oh,
it can be someone without any coaching experience. Just like, who would you think?
Well, a coach who's currently in the business.
Yeah, not necessarily a head coach.
Not back in the day.
Yeah.
I'd take Bill Belichick. I'd take the coach of the Patriots. I mean, he's won more. He's won with a lot of different players. He's always got his team right there every year. His record kind of speaks for itself. I mean, he's not the most pleasant guy to be around. He's very demanding, which winning coaches tend to be. Mm-hmm. There are people who think that he cheats. I think that's overstating it, but he'll do whatever it takes to get an edge and win. That's just the nature of his style of coaching. It's one of the reasons why he does win. So if you asked me the question, if I could have one coach, who would it be? Just based on the track record, I don't know how you could go anywhere else but Bill Belichick.
How about?
He's not a guy you want to go out and have a beer with. He's not a guy you want to go out and you want to go off fly fishing for 2 weeks in a log cabin. But
Mm-hmm.
if you just want to field a football team and go out and win games and compete for championships, he's probably your guy.
Now, if you took time, we're in a time machine, and it could be at any time, who would you choose?
I would probably say Lombardi.
Wow.
I would probably say Lombardi. He didn't coach all that long. It's interesting that his name is so. I mean, it's one of the great names in pro football. Everybody knows Lombardi. I mean, his name is on the Super Bowl trophy
Mm-hmm.
for a reason. But he didn't coach all that long, to be honest. He took over the Green Bay Packers when they were as down and out as a football team could be, 1-10-1. And within 2 years, he had him playing for the championship, and really kind of established the football culture in the city of Green Bay. In this tiny little town where no player wanted to go, he went there and took over a beaten down, bedraggled, dispirited franchise and turned them into a team that ruled the NFL for the better part of a decade. People still talk about the Lombardi Packers, and they've had great years since, but there's something special about that era. And what makes it special is him. And one of the things that look, I only met him once, and it was really kind of at the end of his life. But I've certainly interviewed many, many, many of his players, and the love that they have for him is unique. I mean, you talk to the guys who played for Lombardi, and as tough as he was on them, and he was tough, the players to a man loved the guy, and they ruled pro football for basically the decade of the 60s. And if you look at what he accomplished, what he inherited, and what he built, and where he built it, it's an amazing testimony to what a great coach he was. And, little footnote out there for Eagles fans, Lombardi only lost one postseason game in his career, and it was the 1960 game against the Eagles. The 1960 Eagles were the only team to beat Vince Lombardi in a postseason game. After that, and several of his players have told me that in the locker room at Franklin Field after that game, after they lost to the Eagles 17-13, Tommy McDonald scored a touchdown, that Lombardi told his players, this will never happen to us again. And it didn't. For the rest of that decade, they went to 5 more championship games and never lost.
Well, what was the quote that he said about Tommy McDonald?
It was after that game, and he said, if I had 11 Tommy McDonalds, I would win a championship every year.
Yeah,
was what he said. And in fact, Lombardi, at the end of that game, when all the people were roaring out of the stands and tearing down the goalposts, and Lombardi found his way through the crowd and sought out Tommy and shook his hand and said, Tommy McDonald, you were a great football player. And then in the locker room, that's when he said, if I had 11 Tommy McDonalds, I'd win a championship every year. And Tommy often said that was the greatest compliment he ever received, that Lombardi said that about him, because he had tremendous, as everyone did, tremendous respect for Lombardi. But in this case, it was mutual. Lombardi had just as much respect for Tommy.
That's great. That's great. I find it interesting because, I mean, I can't say that I know much, but the way you talk about Lombardi and the way you talk about Belichick, while they were both your picks, they seem very, very different styles, very, very different coaches, and very, very different relationships with their teams. I find that interesting.
Well, they're different eras too. I mean, the game has changed tremendously from Lombardi's days. I mean, that was the 60s, and we're living in a different age now. And we're now living in an era, and we have been for a while, of free agency, where players kind of jump from this team to that team to this team to that team. Back in the 60s, the Lombardi Packers, that was his team. He built it, and he kept it together for a decade. I mean, the guys that won for him in 1960 were the same guys that were winning for him in 67, 68. Because they didn't have free agency. And if you were part of that team, you were part of that team. And if you built a great team, you could keep it together for 7, 8, 9 years, which Vince did. One of the things that's remarkable about Belichick is in this free agency era, with players moving here and there and him having to reconstruct the roster every single year, he still takes that group of players and builds a championship level football team. So the difference in the year is the big difference there. Lombardi built one great team and sustained it for a decade, whereas Belichick, like every NFL coach, including Doug Peterson, Andy Reid, all of them, because there's so much movement team to team, you kind of have to rebuild your team each year. It's, in some ways, it's even a greater challenge.
Would you change that? Would you change the free agency?
No, because I think the one thing it's created is it gives the players a measure of freedom that they didn't have before. And I think it's kind of right that if a guy serves out his contract with the team, he gets to the end of his contract with the team, and they don't want to pay him what he's worth on the open market, he can go somewhere else and make more money. That's really kind of what free enterprise is about. That's really kind of what America's supposed to be.
Right.
And, when you didn't have that, when there was no free agency in sports, guys got locked into situations, and frankly, teams took advantage of it. So I'm for the players getting all they can. It's a brutally hard game. And the physical toll that it takes on the players is enormous. I mean, I go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame enshrinement many years, and I see these guys in their 40s on walkers and canes, and even the great players pay a great price for playing this game. So I want to see them, if they can make the money, let them make the money, because believe me, they earn it. If you're an owner, you can own a team forever. You can be in your family forever. But if you're a player, you can only play as long as your body allows you to play. So let those guys make the money when they can.
It's their bodies, their minds. They put everything at risk when they go out on the field, just all the time. And I hope they use their gifts well, but they're definitely putting themselves out there, and for us. And I know in the world of theater, it is literally not theater if you don't have an audience there. You can call it performance, you can call it entertainment, you can call it art, but you really can't call it theater if you do not have that direct performer audience interaction. And that is what makes it theater. And not that I'm surprised, but we're just seeing it in the sports at how much it is affecting the players in the game not to have the fans and the players together.
Sure. It is, and I think it'll even be more dramatic when you get to pro football, because there's no sport where the home field advantage is more pronounced, or the audience is more part of the game, part of the atmosphere of the game is pro football Sundays. It's just thrilling. I mean, it's one of the great things about it is just that excitement that you feel walking in the stadium. I mean, I've been doing it from the time I was 10 years old, back in the 50s. And yet I still get excited walking in the stadium on Sunday. And you take that and you multiply it by 70,000. There's a real electricity in the stadium that it's going to be lost this year. And the players and the coaches are going to go about doing what they're doing, and they're going to play hard, and they're going to compete because that's what they do. But as an event, it's definitely going to lose something. They always talk about everybody wants home field advantage. You play for the playoffs to get home field advantage. And it's not really about the grass. It's not really about the stadium. It's about the atmosphere in there and what the fans bring to it and what they create. And it doesn't matter whether you're playing in Dallas, Philadelphia, or Seattle. It's all going to be neutralized this year because it's all going to be the same. And so it's, there's no way to replicate that. I mean, they're going to play music. They're probably going to pump in some crowd noise, but it's not going to have that same spontaneous energy that you normally have with pro football. And I'm going to miss it. I know I'm going to miss it. And everybody who's and any connection to pro football is going to miss it. It's going to be a very, very strange year.
I can't help but mention this part of and how it relates to theater. That we all go to movies. We love movies. Movies are wonderful. They've had the chance to do post-production. Everything is perfect. Everyone sees the same thing. But when you go to live theater, it's very different with the people next to you, and having a shared experience. It's a difference. You can watch a game at home and you have your friends there, and that's great. But it is very different than when you're watching a game live. And that's a parallel to live theater. It's like you have those people there. You've just shared an experience. Just like when you're at a game, all of a sudden you're best friends with the person next to you that you hadn't met before, because you just are, because you're sharing this moment. And that's what theater is like as well, which is why we all want you to write another play, Ray.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's certainly true. I mean, there's no really better example of that than, you know, than Governor Rendell, you know, who is just you know, most people know he does the pre and post game show with us at Comcast Sportsnet. And there's no bigger sports fan in this town, and there's no bigger Eagles fan than him. Even though he's a New York native, he grew up in New York. I mean, he's fully immersed in Philadelphia, and he loves the Eagles. And the whole time he was DA, the whole time he was mayor, and the whole time he was governor, I mean, he didn't sit in the super box. He sat in the stands. You know, he didn't want to be behind glass. I mean, he wanted to be out there with the folks, you know, because he wanted to be part of that. You know, Mike Trout, you know, the great player for the Angels, best player in baseball. You know, he's from Millville, New Jersey, grew up an Eagles fan, and he's at every Eagles game, and he could afford a super box, but he sits down with the crowd because he wants to be part of that. There's a magic to that whether you're Mike Trout or whether you're, you know, some guy who's just a blue collar worker, you want to be part of it. You want to share it. It is, as you said, it's totally communal. And in Philadelphia, it's just, it speaks to what we are as a city and the pride that we take in our teams, and how people bring that sense of self and their own identity and their own pride of the city into that stadium on Sunday. Boy, when they kick it off, I mean, it's real. I mean, it's palpable. And it was really one of the things that drove the Eagles to the Super Bowl in 2017. I mean, that team got on a roll. When Wentz got hurt, Foles came in, and it was like, okay, we ain't stopping. Okay. I mean, we lost Carson Wentz. It's a tough blow, but you know, we're going to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's where we've been going all year, and we're still going to go. And the crowd, the feeling that the crowd gave them, that lift that they gave them, really helped carry them. They had home field advantage in the playoffs. You know, they played the first playoff game at home against Atlanta, squeaked by. Next playoff game was against Minnesota. They blew them out, and then went to the Super Bowl and beat the Patriots. But I really do think nobody thought without Wentz that they could win in the postseason. But I really do think one of the big reasons that they won in the postseason was because they had those two home games. I really do think that the Philadelphia fans and that tremendous energy and fire that they brought to the stadium in those two nights is really what kind of lifted this team and allowed them to get to the Super Bowl where they finally won it.
Well, we started off talking about like how tough and wonderful our fans are, but really, if you were going to think of an iconic moment of what it really means to be a Philadelphia fan, is after the win and on camera with you and your son. I mean, we all know this moment. If you want to tell how that came to be, that was just, you expressed what we were all feeling.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. I think it was just, it was totally spontaneous. We were doing the post-game show from the booth right there overlooking the field. And my son, who's a cameraman for NFL Films, who actually shot the Nick Foles wiring in that game, that famous byplay between him and Peterson, the Philly kind of thing. My son shot that. That was his camera work. But when it was over, he said, "I'm going to find you wherever you are, and I want to give you a big hug to celebrate this team winning the Super Bowl." And I didn't think he would find me. I mean, first of all, he had to finish up his work for NFL Films. And how are you going to find anybody in the post-Super Bowl? It's like Times Square on New Year's Eve. But sure enough, he found where we were, and he came in and he came on the set, and we had that hug on camera on live TV. And up to that point, I had really kind of been keeping my emotions in check. I mean, I was excited and I was happy that they had won, happy for the city, happy for my family and everybody. But I kind of held my own emotions in check because I thought, you know, I'm supposed to be professional here. I'm supposed to be sort of maintain some level of objectivity. But when I hugged David, I just broke down and started to cry. And there I was crying on live television, back to a very big audience in Philadelphia. And I really didn't know how it would play. Frankly, I was a little embarrassed.
Sure.
but when I came home, the emails I got, the cards and letters I got, people just loved it and said it was, for them, it was one of the highlights of the night, of the day. And they all said kind of what you said is, you know, that moment is something that everybody was sharing. I mean, everybody was hugging somebody at that moment. You know, everybody was getting tearful thinking about their grandfather or their father and how they all wished that they could be here because this is what they always wanted. And so it, you know, I mean, David and I kind of became like avatars for the whole Delaware Valley. It was like we kind of put our arms around the whole city at that moment. It just so happened that we did it on camera. So it had a great, it was, people just loved it. And I still hear about it to this day. And in fact, that is how I opened the book, is kind of with that, because that was kind of the finished business. You know, I kind of, after all these years, I finally got to see the Eagles win a Super Bowl, and I got to share it with my son. So it was the best of all possible worlds.
That's wonderful. Ray, thank you so much for sharing with us, with just being here, with sharing the beautiful story of Tommy and me with theater audiences, to bring the sports fans and the arts fans all together, and the passion that is Philadelphia and what we love. There's Ray, you are just such a beautiful voice for our city, and I am so glad you came over to theater and you shared it with us as well. I dribble, I drool. I've known you for years, and I still dribble and drool when I talk to you, Ray, because I am in just awe of what a wonderful, generous person you are, and in a field that can be really rough and hard, and sports, and where you are a gentleman, one of our fans here, a class act. You are the best of us, and you always make us better. Thank you so much for just bringing so much heart and joy to us all the time.
Thanks,
I want to
Deb.
take.
It was a real pleasure. I've enjoyed it, and you know, thank you and thank Joe, and thank all the people at Theatre Exile that took the story of Tommy and me and brought it to life. You know, it's been a wonderful, unexpected, but thoroughly delightful chapter in my life, and it's something that you know, I mean, you guys embraced it the way I embraced it, and the fact that we've had 4 years of it, and I think we're going to have more. You know, when the theater doors reopen, I think we'll do it again. It's just been a wonderful, thrilling experience. So I thank you for making that possible.
It has been a joy. People have been asking. Yes, it is our intention to bring it back. Hopefully the Uptown Theater will be its next stop in Westchester. That's what we're hoping for. We won't let this pandemic stand in the way forever. We will find a way to bring it back and bring it to audiences, obviously in a safe and healthy way. That is always first and foremost. We can be patient so that we can all be there when it comes time to gather again. And that is the most important thing. I hope some of you out here who may not have come to Theatre Exile before, come and join us for some of our experiences, hopefully eventually to live theater. And if you're not near Theatre Exile, we'll have some virtual shows in the fall, but just go to theater, enjoy it. You know, whether it's ours or someone else's, really bring it into your life. It's as exciting as you can imagine. And it just makes a better day. The same way you feel when you still go into the sports field, the same way I feel every time I go to theater and the lights go down. I well up and I'm excited, and that never goes away. And it's just something I want to share with all of our friends. I'm going to ask Jack, who has been running this backstage, so to speak, to allow people to turn on their video cameras, sort of invite you in with Ray and myself, just so we can see each other. It'll be like saying hi in the lobby for just a couple minutes after the show, if Jack is able to do that, just so we can see each other. That's one of the just sort of the nicest things that we want to do, is just see each other and be in the same space. So while that's happening, so Ray, your book is coming out. It's Temple Press, right? It's
Temple University Press, and it will be out the schedule is for it to come out next spring, either March or April. It'll be out next spring, and hope people enjoy it. It's I try to not make it a story just totally about me. I try to make it be more about my experiences, people I've met, games I've seen, experiences I've had. I wanted it to be just kind of me walking people through my 50 years in the business. Some of the things I've seen, some of the things I've covered, the great moments and some of the not so great moments. It's all there. I've had a great run, Deb. I mean, 50 years is a long time, and I've been able to do it all in one city, and it's the city where I was born and grew up. I mean, there aren't many guys in my business that have that opportunity to work in one place, well, to work in the place where they grew up, and then also stay there for as long as I've been able to stay there. I've been very, very fortunate, and I hope that comes across in the story. I mean, I refer to that constantly as how blessed I feel to have been able to do the things I've done for as long as I've done them. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
That's great. And I kind of wonder what the people here would think about the idea of, have you ever considered doing an audiobook of it? Like, would you record your own audiobook of it?
I don't know that Temple Press has ever done an audiobook. They haven't talked about doing one on here. I'd certainly be willing to do it.
Okay.
We didn't do one with Eagles Encyclopedia, but Eagles Encyclopedia, I don't know that lends itself to an audiobook. You know, reading the list of the all-time Eagles draft pick from 1940 to 1999 probably wouldn't be great listening. But maybe we will do this. Maybe we will. We'll see.
Well, let's see. We can do a show of hands, and we can get back to your publishers. How many of you would actually love to listen to Ray telling his story? You can do the show of hands, or you can do the little hands in the, yep, we got some people in the attendance doing it. You can tell them you just did a survey here and let them know that that's something that.
Yeah, no, I just turned our video on.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, guys, so I see everyone. And here, if you can all just Fana, why don't you wave? She's our stage manager and production manager for Tommy and me. Here, look, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone.
Oh, I see some very familiar faces here. This is really nice.
Yeah.
My daughter and son-in-law are down there. Kathleen, Scott,
where are they? Wait.
They said they would check in. I wasn't sure they would.
Oh, hey.
And there's Jess. Hi, Jess.
Yeah.
This is really great. This is really great.
Mary, who comes far and wide to see Tommy and me every time she can. Yeah, we got a lot of people. I saw David Carty there for a second, who's been a big Philly Theatre Exile fan. Let's see who else. We got a whole bunch of people here just to say hi. Any final? Oh, there's Bob Dever. Hey, how you doing? Michael. So it's I love this moment. I don't know about the rest of you, but I love this moment. Get to see everyone. People I haven't seen in a while. And again, meeting in the lobby. It's one of the things that I miss.
That's cool. People than I anticipated.
Yeah. Any final words for us, Ray? How are we going to make it through with this weird sports season? How are we going to do it? Give us a moment of hope, Ray.
Well, if you're looking for hope, I would tell you to follow the Flyers. I think they're very for real. I really do.
Yep.
I mean, they are very young, which is a little scary because a lot of these guys have never been in this position before, and the goalie has never been in the playoffs before. So you always worry about that because the goaltender counts so much. But this kid seems nerveless. He just turned 22 today. He looks like he's about 14 years old, but but I think he's the real thing. And yeah, if they can just avoid injury and stay on track, I think it's very realistic to think that they could win the whole thing.
That's great. That's great.
Wish we could have a parade. Wish we could have a parade. We'd probably have to forego the parade, but I think the excitement of actually watching them win the cup would be worth it. It would.
Okay,
I think it would lift everybody's spirits.
My thing for the parade. We'll have one of those Google cars drive down Broad Street. We know everyone will stand on their stoops because that's what Philadelphia does, and wave and yell, and we give that love to the teams. We'll figure out a way. We're creative people here in Philadelphia. We'll figure out a way of sharing the love. That's what we'll do. So,
Yeah, well, I was at the first Flyers parade in '74. They were expecting 100,000 people, and they got 2 million. So that was a day that I'll never forget. So it would be nice to have that celebration again.
Yeah, that'll be great. Well, again,
people. There weren't that many people living in Philadelphia then. I'm not joking.
There was, that's right.
well, they all came. I was living in the burbs, but we were all there.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Well,
And if the Flyers win the cup, that'll give me something to write about. That's for sure.
okay. There you go. Yeah, we have a young journalist who wanted to know if you had any advice for him. How do you write about sports right now?
Oh, well, it's so different than when I first got into it. I mean, when I got into it, newspaper, it was really kind of the golden age of newspapers, the late 60s, and then into the 70s, the whole Bernstein, Woodward Bernstein thing.
The Watergate scandal.
Yeah, I mean, it was really a great era for newspapers. I got in at just the right time, and it's not like that now. I mean, we see what's happened with newspapers. They're a dying industry. I hate to say it, but it's true. Everybody's getting their information on their cell phone now, and except me, who doesn't have a cell phone. But everybody else is getting all their news from a cell phone. So it's a whole different industry. But the one thing I would say is people still, they want news. They consume news. They're just consuming it in a different fashion. So if the jobs are out there, and certainly the opportunity and the need is out there for good, well-trained, honest journalists. The need probably is as great as it's ever been. I mean, Lord knows. I mean, we're all tired of hearing the term fake news. So the need for good journalism is maybe as acute as it's ever been, but it's just a different medium now. But if you're interested in that and you think you've got a career in journalism and it's a desire you have, and that's what your heart's telling you, then follow it. Because I can tell you.
I've been telling me that since I was 10.
It's enormously satisfying.
Yeah.
And go out and vote.
Sorry?
And go out and vote.
Yeah, there you go.
Just vote. Just get out and vote.
And get out and vote.
Or send it by mail. Just do what you have to do. But yes, we need a change.
Oh, smart.
I second the motion.
Second the motion. Well, it's lovely to see everyone. Ray, thank you so much. We need to get going. And so thank you so much. Just stay tuned. Tommy and me will be back. Join us. Keep coming back to Theatre Exile. We'll keep finding ways of connecting. And thank you so much. Ray, thank you. Thanks, Jess. Thank Marty. Thank Jack and Bill, everyone, Allison, and who's here. Thank you so much. All right. So
Thank you, everybody. It was really a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, Ray.